Welcome to call three. Sex. Um, it's probably not what you think. It's really not about intercourse or penetration or porn. It's more about energy and the sexualness and the sexual energies and life force energy and creation energies. So I'm just going to get right into it and then I'm going to pause in a little bit. And if you will, yeah, we'll have some time for you guys to um, ask questions, but also please feel free to unmute and ask questions. And, this is not, it doesn't have to be super formal. All right. So before we begin, I want you to gently unhook from everything you've ever been taught about sex. So take a deep breath in through your nose, all the way down into your belly and your hips and your pelvis. And then exhale out your mouth with a sound. So inhale deeply and then exhale with a sound. And do it again and let your shoulders drop and let your jaw soften and let your pelvic floor soften even just 1% more. Open up that root chakra. And then expand out energetically. Lower all your walls and barriers. Good. So tonight we're talking about and walking into the temple of sex and sexuality and sexualness. And when I say sex, I want to make something very clear. Sex is about our bodies, but not about how we were taught about it. Sex is not an obligation. Sex is not a performance. Sex is not a transaction. Sex is not something dirty or dangerous. Sex is the way life force moves through the body, like the way your feminine or masculine energy moves through your body. Sex is how your cells remember they are alive. Sex is how your body talks to creation. So I want you to imagine something for a moment. What if you had never, ever been taught that sex was taboo, secret, or improper to talk about? And what if you grew up in a home where your parents or your guardian or whomever was teaching you and taking care of you and responsible for you talked about sex the way they talked about food and sleep, as if it were something normal and sacred and a part of being a human? What if those people talked about women's bodies and men's bodies with reverence? What happens in a woman's body during sex? And what happens in a man's body during sex? Not as shame or threat, but as creation and power. And we're going to get into that a little bit more a little bit later. So, what if the first messages you got about sex was your body is wise, your pleasure is safe, your desire is information, not a problem, and sex is a way to connect to your own power, not to lose it? Feel the difference in your body for a moment that timeline exists in you. So I was raised in a household where sex was super taboo. It was like we were told about it, like when we first started our periods, I have two sisters, and then it was like never talked about ever again. Only that if you had sex out of wedlock, you basically were going to go to hell, and that you just really shouldn't ever have sex with someone unless you were trying to make a baby, because that's all it was for. So it was sort of like a dirty deed or a dirty act. And so was our menstrual cycle. And so were like private parts and bodies. Like we were, it felt like gross to be a human growing up in my parents' household. Like you just don't talk about it. You just stay away from it. It's like a big no-no. But sex didn't start out that way. And we'll talk about that in a minute too. I'm going to go into a little bit of the history of sex, sexualness, and like how in the past they used to really see it as like this sensual, powerful act. So tonight we're going to map it out like this. Sex is your generator. Your generator produces energy. That energy becomes abundance, not just money, but time, love, support, ideas, and resources creation. And then abundance opens up opportunity, and opportunities reshape your identity. And identity is what locks your manifestations into place. So, like your alignment identity with yourself, your true self, and who you truly are. So, that all, like, that's the alchemy of sex. That's the energy of what sex actually is. So, sex equals the generator. Sex is the engine under the hood, not just intercourse. And sex doesn't have to be touching either. Like you can have a sexual experience or a sexiness, or you can feel your sexualness or someone else's sexualness. But sex is the generator. So it's like that arousal, that pleasure point. It's the generator that turns on your creativity and it turns on your connection with life. And then generator is energy. So when your energy is online, you have an energy of motivation, clarity, forward momentum. When it's collapsed, everything feels heavy, obligatory, and flat. Okay? So then energy equals abundance, and abundance is just energy given form. The more clean energy you have circulating, the more abundance can show up as money, support, love, ideas, business, clients, synchronicities, resources. And then abundance equals opportunities. Abundance buys you options, or at least gets you in the door. And it opens the doors to rooms you can walk into, people you can hire, people you can work with, people you can create with. It's healing you can receive and choices that you actually have. So that abundance, that's opportunities, is where you see the choices that are actually there for you. And then opportunities equals identity. So that's where you start to line up with yourself, because you're starting to see like, oh, this is available and this is available. So those choices that are like creating your awareness. So every new room you step into, every opportunity you say yes to, reinforces a different identity. I am the person who gets chosen, who is supported, who is trusted, who is well reinforced. And then that aligned identity equals how you manifest. And when we have the manifestation class, we'll talk about that more. But you don't manifest from where you're wishing from. So you don't really manifest from the space that you're in right now. Like if you're trying to manifest something where you are right now, who you are right now, and the identity that you're in right now, That's not where you actualize something from. That's not how it shows up. You manifest from who you believe you are, the energy you're showing up as, what you're putting out into the world. So remember, was it in the first class we were talking about inspired action and aligned action? That's part of where this is like gonna all tie together at the end in manifestation. Identity is the setting your reality organizes around. So I started 12/1 today creating a new identity. And I've been working on it for the last couple of weeks, like lining it up and lining it up and lining it up. But it's like how, and Alejandra sent me a video about like a 10x, and I'm like, ooh, I'm going to 10x my identity. Like how to 10x your life, your business, your money. It was really good. So it's like your habits need to change and things need to change for that identity to come into alignment and for you to be able to believe it. But we'll get into that later. That's all in manifestation. We're talking about sex. Okay. So those are the energies that we're playing with tonight. And most of us were never taught this. I was taught sex is dangerous, sex is shameful, sex is for someone else's pleasure. Sex is something you give, perform, withhold, or use, but rarely something that belongs to you as your own life force. So tonight is not about making you better at sex. Tonight is about returning your sexual energy in your actual body back to its rightful place as your life force, your identity, your money, your abundance, your creations, and all of that power that belongs to you. So if your body feels a little light, buzzy, numb, or a little freaked out right now, that's okay. Your nervous system is just noticing we're about to talk about the thing we were told never to talk about. So let's make an agreement. You do not have to share anything tonight you don't want to share. You do not have to go into any story or memory that feels too big. You are allowed to say no, to pause, to turn off your camera, to regulate yourself at any time, or to leave the room if you need to. Your no is welcome in this space. Your yes is welcome in this space. Your I don't know yet is also welcome in this space because sovereignty is the whole point. So take another deep breath. Inhale into your lower belly. Exhale and let your hips and pelvic floor soften a little bit more. So, what if we were taught that sex is life force energy, creation, identity, and power circulation? When a human collapses their sexual energy, they collapse their money field, their self-worth. I think some of us on this call can understand what that means. They collapse their receiving channels. They collapse their capacity to be seen and their capacity to manifest. We need to remember, though, that collapse is not our fault. Collapsing is not your fault. It came from religion. It came from family systems. It came from abuse. It came from neglect. It came from porn culture. It came from parents or guardians who didn't honor you. It came from a world that is terrified of humans who are actually fully turned on by their own life. So what if you just sat here for a moment and closed your eyes and imagine what it would feel like for you to be totally and completely turned on by your own life? And in that moment, if any part of you believes I'm too much. I'm not enough. My desire is dangerous. My pleasure is selfish. My body is the problem. Just notice all of that for a moment. Notice what comes up. That's not your original truth. That's programming. So I don't want to force anything open tonight. I just want to look under the lid. I don't want to rip off something, a Band-Aid, and just, expose your trauma. We're not trying to push your nervous system past its capacity. We're going to do something more radical and more intelligent. We're going to remember that your sexual energy in this body right now is your manifesting currency. It's the same energy that grows babies, builds businesses, writes books, changes timelines, pulls in money, calls in relationships, stops cars, creates entire new versions of you. And we're going to start turning that generator back on in a way that your nervous system can actually hold. So again, check in with your body. And you don't have to name this out loud if you don't want to. But on a scale from 0 to 10, how safe do you feel in this body in this moment? How present do you feel from the neck down? And how much energy is actually here with you in this room? Good. So you cannot manifest like a quantum generator while running a collapsed, braced, shame-filled sexual system. So you can mindset your way, vision board your way, and affirm your way through for a while. But if your body is still holding on to sex is bad, my desire is dangerous, my pleasure is wrong, your system will cap your money, your visibility, your relationships, and your capacity to receive. And again, I'm not talking about copulation or any kind of physical touch even. I'm just talking about that sexual energy that exists, that fire in your belly, that root chakra, that sacral chakra. All right, there's nothing about you that is too broken sexually for this to work. There's nothing about your past that disqualifies you. David, are you pointing at something?
Somebody came downstairs and started talking to me, and so I was like,
Oh,
I'm on a Zoom meeting. Yeah, so I was pointing at my ears, and
okay. I was like,
what
what's
is he
happening right
doing?
now? That's awesome. Okay. All right. There's nothing about your past that disqualifies you. If anything, your history is what makes you powerful when you reclaim this field. You are not behind, you are right on time. So, first tonight, we're going to talk about sexual energy as manifesting currency, which we've already gotten started, and how your body actually reads turn on as aliveness and capacity. And then we're going to look at how your sexual identity has shaped the history of it, the roles, the shame, the stories, and begin to choose a new template. And then we'll bring in your nervous system because we don't want more voltage running through a fried circuit board. We want a board that can hold power. So we're going to do a little exercise later on. We'll do an imprint that will clear old, or we'll do a ritual that will clear old imprints and lovers from your field with love and not hate. And we'll close by anchoring in a sovereign sexual field that feeds your money, your manifestation, and your relationships moving forward. We're going to move from sex equals shame, danger, and performance to sex equals power, identity, money, and creation. And I should say abundance there, really. Okay. So sex equals power transmission. Does anyone have any questions? I'll go to that first before we get into this next part. No? Everybody good? Okay. So the core presence or the core premise is sex is not about. I got to take this gum out because it's bothering me. Okay, there we go. That'll be better. Blah. Sex is not about bodies in the sense of a porn actor or pornography. Sex is not about performance. Sex is not about what you do in bed. Sex is your original energy creating power source. Sex is presence, like pure, amazing, unconditional, vulnerable, expanded out presence. Sex is life force, sex is identity. And what do I mean by that? I mean alignment. Sex is how it's like sexualness and how you show up in the world. Sex is creation. Sex is magnetism. Sex is personal sovereignty. Sex is the generator of every manifestation you've ever pulled in or blocked. When a person collapses their sexual energy, they collapse their money field, their receiving capacity, their self worth blueprint, their visibility field, their ability to choose, create timelines, and their access to creation energies. When they reopen their sexual current, their entire life accelerates because they stop leaking, suppressing, numbing, or outsourcing their power. I love you. In this class, I want you to remember how to run your sexual system like a quantum generator, not a wounded, collapsed, emotionally entangled nervous system reacting to old lovers, trauma, or societal programming. And I personally know that this is difficult because I had to go get help for all of that after a sexual assault, and it was crazy. So, when I'm talking about sex too, I'm really talking about sex with yourself. And when we've been traumatized in that way, in any way, sexually, it doesn't even have to be intercourse. Sexual assault can be someone exposing themselves to you and you didn't ask them for that. It can be an inappropriate comment. I mean, we are actually sexually assaulted by marketing and media every day. And sexual assault comes out in society as a norm. Like people say things, right? People have sexual innuendos, and you're like, wait, I'm not on the same page as you. Where did that come from? No, that's actually sexual assault. So if there are sexual traumas and things like that in your body, I'm not saying that we shouldn't get help and we shouldn't seek therapy and we shouldn't seek some way to heal that. I'm just saying that my hope and desire for you is if you have that at all in your life, whatever it looked like, that you're able to create a healing place for that wound. And please don't hold off if you can finding help or someone to help you with that. Pushing it down can create it can create, I'm not saying it's going to, but it can create negative things occurring in your body. Just I have personal experience from that. And I think too, in our society, I'm kind of going off script here for a minute, but for some reason this energy is up for me right now, so I'm going to talk about it. I think too, we don't understand how much sexual assault goes on with children in our society, or had. I mean, I think it's still prevalent now. Um, but when that happens, your body and your system gets exposed to sexual energy and sexualness way before it should ever happen, probably. And like, I was sexually assaulted also by my uncle when I was like 3 and 4 and 5, and I can remember it like vividly, but my whole life I was confused by my own sexual energy because I had had these really strange, awful, bizarre experiences as a child with sex. So I was exposed to something that I never got explained to me about what it was and that energy in my own body. And so I kept creating chaos in my life because I didn't understand how to process that energy and what was going on and what happened to me. But I think people choose a lot of times sexual assault because they also don't understand what that energy is and what's going on in their bodies. And so I didn't know for a very long time that just because my body was like turned on by someone or something, it didn't mean that I had to, didn't have to engage with that, right? I could say to my body, thank you for that awareness, and then move on. Like, your body's going to respond sexually to different things and have a sexual energy with different people and different things, but it doesn't mean you have to make that a choice. So always go to asking questions. Ask your body, is that choice going to create something crazy, or is it going to create my aligned identity and my future and life force and all of those things? Okay. Amanda. Does anyone have any questions about that? Alejandra. People are laughing. I love it. It's good. Laughter shifts the energy, right? Get it out. Push it. I'm going to say something very inappropriate and it's going to trigger people a little bit. And you know what? I'm not going to say it. It's too harmful. Okay. I don't want to hurt anybody. Okay. Um so what we're talking about tonight. Ooh, hi. How did I zoom in on myself? How do I get that back out? That's so weird.
Is it AI?
I don't think so. That was
Your
interesting.
video, your video started off like that and then it zoomed back and now it just went back forward.
Huh, that's really interesting. Maybe I do have AI companion on. I didn't mean to. Okay, anyway. Um so we're not actually talking about sex tips tonight, and I'm not trying, I mean, I later on in the call I want to heal some of those sexual traumas and things that we have stored in our bodies, because honestly I think that happens to each and every one of us. Um but I want to talk about an energetic sovereignty via the sexual system. So again, I'm going back to the alchemy of sexual energy, like sex magic, and I don't know if anyone on this call is familiar with that means, but I'll go into that more next class with magic. But there is a way to create with that sexualness, that sexual energy. It doesn't have to be copulation, but it actually goes way back to like Egyptian times and the Eye of Ra and all this stuff. But we'll talk about that next week. Um, so sexual energy is the raw voltage of creation. So just think about when you feel really good and charged up in your body and you have that swagger and you have that energy of, I can have everything I want right now. And when you walk into a room and you know that you're changing the energy of the room because of how you feel, and then That's crazy. All right. Um, okay. Hopefully that fixes it. But do you guys know what I'm talking about? Like, I know that when I put on certain clothes or when I need to shift something in my body, I will get. Is it possible to increase your volume? Yes, maybe. Maybe this isn't working so well. I will switch it to something else. Is this better?
No, it's not better.
All right. What is happening tonight? Amanda, what's going on?
I could hear you okay on your little microphone.
We're going to try it this
I hear Amanda clearer than you. Amanda sounds more clear.
Okay, we're going to try it this
when
way.
I hear Nady talking, it's really loud. Like Natalie talking was way louder than you talking.
Okay, how's this?
That's better.
Great.
Natalie, is this better?
Yeah, I think that is. Yeah.
Okay, we'll try this. If it does it again, please let me know.
Okay,
I'm going
thank
to clear some entities. So, everyone, lower all your walls and barriers. Expand out. Ooh. Wow. So I'm going to just, entities, I feel you, I hear you, I see that you're here. Thank you for whatever it is that you wanted to contribute. And now we ask that you leave, please. And come back later and talk to me later. Now is not the time. All right, everybody feel okay? I feel lighter. Does anyone else feel lighter?
So much lighter. Yes, that was great.
Yeah.
Perfect timing.
Yeah, I was like, what the hell is going on? And usually when things are flickering and being weird, there's entities. So I love you guys, just not right now. If anybody needs to talk about that, whatever that was after the class, I'm happy to stay on and facilitate if that was with someone or for someone else. I'm here for it. Okay. So sexual energy is the raw voltage of creation. It's not about sex copulation. It's the current that builds bodies, identities, timelines, and wealth. When sexual energy is flowing, the nervous system, so this is how sexual energy is connected through the body. It's connected through the root chakra, actually through the bottom of your feet, because I can receive sexual energy from the earth. And then it goes up through your nervous system. And I'm not super familiar with Kundalini yoga, but I believe Kundalini yoga is the one where you breathe from your perineum, and Dr. Joe Dispenza does this too, where you breathe from your perineum and you bring like this sexual energy fluid like up your spinal cord and up your nervous system and then into your brain. Yeah, it like goes into your pineal gland. So when sexual energy is flowing, the nervous system reads, I'm alive, I can move, I can hold more. So when your nervous system is aligned and it feels safe, that sexual energy can flow through you with more ease. Okay. So when sexual energy is collapsed or shameful or wounded, it can feel like I'm not safe. I need to hide. I can't handle more. I'm shutting down. Where is creation? And I know, like with Where is Creation, some women talk about their sexual energy changing as they age. However, it doesn't sexual energy is not about intercourse. You can still have sexual energy and sexualness and a sexual exchange with someone without it including bodies. So that change does occur because it's not about making babies anymore, right? But you can still have that sexual energy in your life. So this is about a turn on with life, not just a turn on with your lover. So I want you to just sit again for a moment and close your eyes. And what would it feel like in your bodies for life to be turning you on? And how much of that currency and flow and life force and creation can you allow to move through you? That is the receiving molecule. That's pleasure. And if you can't receive pleasure just from life, just from yourself, just from the universe, just from existence, you won't be able to allow in money, love, support, or opportunities because you cut off all your receiving. So breathe your breath all the way down to your root chakra again, into your pelvis. And then I want you this time, though, to exhale out through your heart. And then I want you to ask your body, can you allow 2% more sensation to be here without fixing it, numbing it, or leaving your body? All right, we're going to talk more about manifestation later, but I want to go into the history of sex. Okay? So the first recorded mention of sex was in 3400, approximately 3400 to 3200 BCE. And in ancient languages, there wasn't even a word for sex. It was like in ancient Hebrew, the verb for it was to know you. If you were going to have a man or two people or a man and a woman copulate. And I know that there are, how do I say that? It doesn't have to be a man and a woman. I'm just generalizing that, I guess. In ancient Greek, it was to mingle or to go into. In Sanskrit, it was terms related to union, embrace, enjoyment. And then Sumerian text in Mesopotamia had verbs like words that meant lying together, embracing, sacred union. Okay, so the earliest inscriptions mentioning sex appear in the Inanna, I may not be pronouncing that correctly, and the Dumuzi cycle. It was written in sacred marriage hymns, temple economy tablets, and erotic incantations. And these are the oldest known explicit references to sex in human writing. So in the earliest forms, in the earliest sources of sex, this is where people get it wildly wrong. So sex wasn't seen as dirty. It wasn't seen as sinful. It wasn't seen as private. And it wasn't seen as transactional. It wasn't any of that. In the earliest human records, sex was considered a cosmic technology, not a romance, not shame, not sin. Okay. So, sex as a sacred act. In the earliest tablets, sex is described as a merging of energies, a replenishing act for the gods, a fertility cycle for the land, a ritual that mirrors the union of sky and earth, and a way to renew cosmic order. And this wasn't metaphorical. This was like literal. Sex was seen as how the world stayed in balance. So Inanna was the goddess of love and sex, and Dumuzi was the shepherd king. And they performed the sacred marriage ritual, which was believed to bring rain, grain fertility, prosperity, protection, and cosmic harmony. Sex wasn't sex, it was a magical infrastructure. So kings would ritually mate with a high priestess representing the goddess Inanna, because the Sumerians believed that sexual union activated divine kingship. So if you didn't have a sex ritual, you did not have any kind of legitimacy, you did not have divine authority, and you had no right to rule. So imagine if you couldn't be president unless you completed a sex ritual with a priestess. That's how it was. So sex equaled energy exchange, literally. And I think Amanda brought us her acronym a couple of weeks ago where she says sex was sacred energy exchange, right? And that is what it was. So the Sumerians describe sexual union as mixing of breaths, pouring of life water, uniting the me divine powers, loosening of the lapis gates, the awakening of heaven in the body. They viewed orgasm as a release of divine vitality, a moment of transcendence, and a bridge between the worlds. There was no shame, there was no judgment, there was no restriction. Sex was natural, it was holy, it was divine, it was celebrated, it was sung about in detail. It was depicted in art without hesitation. The Sumerians didn't hide sex, they ritualized it. Sex was multidimensional. It wasn't just physical pleasure or reproduction, it was a spiritual technology. It was an energetic attunement. It was identity activation. It was architectural magic. It was social cohesion, priesthood training, ecstatic union. The earliest sex texts read more like energy manuals than erotica. Let's see. So the first clear textual description of sex was from the Sacred Marriage Hymn, and translated it was, or it is, in the chamber, honey sweet, he caressed her, he caused her to rejoice, he watered her womb. This is 5,000 years ago, and he watered her womb equaled the earliest written reference to ejaculation. So how did sex become dirty? So first, before we begin this section, I want you to lower all your walls and barriers and expand out. And I want you to connect with your body because your body knows. So sort of like muscle testing. And your soul knows. And before I say this part or share or teach this part, I want you to feel if it's light or heavy. I want you to feel if the things that I'm going to say next are light or heavy. And if it's light, it's true. And if it's heavy, it's a lie. So when sex became dirty or wrong, it didn't happen all at once. It happened in 4 major waves throughout history, each one stripping more power away from sexual energy. So around 1200 and 600 BCE, the rise of patriarchal empires was the first shift. And what happened? So cultures like Assyria, Babylon, early Hebrew tribes, and later Persia began replacing goddess-based religions with male warrior god systems. Why did they do this? For control. Goddess cultures viewed sex as sacred, creative, empowering to women, spiritually activating, and community strengthening. Male warrior religions viewed sex as a threat, chaos, a destabilizer of authority, something that must be regulated. So the shift that occurred was women were no longer priestesses, sex was no longer sacred, the body was increasingly shamed, and sexuality was something to police. This is the first time impurity language shows up. And then in 600 and 200 BCE, which was early Judaism, and this is where purity codes came in. And this is where sex starts to be classified as unclean, impure, sinful, dangerous, and something requiring purification. And why did they do that? Because purity codes equal social controls. If you can control sex, women, and bodies, then you can control inheritance, property, lineage, power, and religious compliance. Sex becomes dirty for political reasons, not spiritual ones. And then in 100 to 400 CE, Christianity weaponizes sex shame. This is the big mutation. What changed? Early Christian leaders decided sex was fallen, sinful, tied to the flesh or evil, inferior to celibacy, and a mark of spiritual weakness. And if you look in the Bible, Jesus did not say anything about sex being sinful. It was when Paul and Augustine and the early church fathers, men with trauma around their own sexual identity, fear of female power, and a desire to control rapidly growing populations, did the change occur. So what was their agenda? They needed people to be obedient, fearful, dependent on clergy, disconnected from their own bodies, ashamed of their own urges, and unable to access power through sex. Because sex is the fastest way humans access direct God source energy. If you want an institution to be the mediator between people and God, you must demonize sex. So this is where sex becomes the dirty deed in the Western world. All right. So the truth that nobody likes to say out loud. Sex became dirty when men in power needed social control, political control, religious authority, financial gain, suppression of feminine magic, suppression of divine connection, and suppression of pleasure as power. Sex shame equals control technology, not a truth and not a moral reality, and not a spiritual law. It becomes a tool. Sex, though, can be healing, ecstatic, boundary dissolving, identity shifting, consciousness expanding, energetically activating, and sovereignty building. But we weren't taught that. And so we didn't have that in our lives as what it actually could be. And then it gets all messed up. And then we end up with a culture that is wrapped around the porn industry and sex being this crazy, wild, and weird exploration for people that's not always safe or kind. And I think a lot of times it's very misunderstood. A sexually sovereign woman is ungovernable, intuitive, powerful, magnetic, able to access source energy directly, not afraid of her own body, and not manipulatable. You can't control a woman who's in full command of her sexual life force. So institutions had to make it shameful. This wasn't about purity, it was about power. Can you imagine if all women were walking around as sex goddesses? Not porn stars, but actual goddesses of creation, knowing their power is to birth life. And yes, we do need the masculine male energy. Of course we do. But if males thought of us as true goddesses of birthing life and creation, what could or would be different? All right. It's about 8 o'clock and I have more to go and I'm going to keep going. So if you want to stay, you can, but let's take a break. We'll take a break for about 5 minutes. So come back at 8 and then we will go on to the 5 pillars of sex. Right. Does anyone have any questions so far? I know Amanda said she's been kind of coming in and out of being able to hear it and not, and I totally get that. I want for this to be a little bit of a transmission. That's why I brought in some of the history of it, because I want our bodies to remember. I want us to remember that sexual energy, where we came from. The cells of those beings and the earth and the water and the air of what was going on at that time is in our bodies and still exists too. So we can access that energy anytime we want to. And I think it's an energy of knowing, it's part of the beingness, our sexualness. But again, I wish it was celebrated in that way and taught in that way. That it's like, and I didn't even know this when I could teach my son about it. And I'm kind of sad about that. Although we've had conversations and he knows a little bit more about it now. But so we're going to go back. We're going to go to the 5 pillars. And the first pillar is sexual energy. Your own sexualness energy equals manifestation currency, and sex equals sacred energy exchange. So remember, sexual energy is the raw voltage of creation. Everyone, for a moment, just access their own sexual energy and their own sexualness. So that's the same energy and the same frequency that builds ecosystems. It builds humans, babies. It builds identities. It builds timelines. It builds wealth. Can I turn it up a little bit more? Does this help? No. I don't know what's going on with my...
I can hear you perfectly.
Okay. Is anyone else having a hard time hearing me? Or is it just Natalie's computer? Okay. Okay, now it's good. Okay, whatever that is. All right. So the nervous system interprets sexual current as aliveness. Tap into your nervous system and feel the sexual current in your nervous system, in your spine, in your body, in your cells as aliveness, confidence, forward motion, and capacity. And capacity as in I can hold more without collapsing. When the sexual energy field rises, the magnetic field expands. The self-concept elevates, and desires lock in faster, and manifestation becomes more natural, not efforted. And this has nothing to do with having sex with someone else. This is about accessing the internal generator. Okay, so you can access it through your breath. And your breath can determine the voltage because your breath can travel all the way down into your pelvic floor where that root chakra is. So this is about moving energies through your body and up through your chakras. And if you can access the chakras that are not in the body, like the 9th and the 12th and all of those. So a shallow breath collapses power, and a full breath turns on the field. And think about how you breathe when your body is turned on and orgasmic. It's like vertical breathing and circular breathing and breath to root activation breathing and breath to heart coherence. And you can access your own sexual energy with body presence, with yourself. If someone leaves their body when they feel desire or sensation, their power leaves too. And if that's happening, there may be some sexual trauma energy that you haven't acknowledged or been able to look at yet. And if you need help with that, please let me know. So if you learned staying in your body and with your body, and if you learned micro check-ins, and if you learned presence over fantasy, what would happen to sex? All right, number 3, to access sexualness and sexual energy with yourself. Sensation tolerance. Most people can't tolerate intensity, emotional, physical, or energetic. And receiving abundance, visibility, vulnerability, love, and miracles and magic are all intense. So expanding capacity without bracing is one way. Riding the wave of the sensation without fear. and holding a charge rather than ejecting from it. Okay. Number 4, allowing pleasure without collapse. Pleasure tolerance equals receiving tolerance or allowance tolerance. So how much pleasure can you have even in a moment that's not pleasurable? There's like a beingness there, a presence there. If you collapse, guilt, shame, or numb out, when you feel good, happy, turned on, excited, or expansive, you collapse the receiving channels. Also, if you collapse when you're feeling angry or frustrated or in pain, like if you go to presence in those moments and get really still and quiet and expand out energetically, you can access those energies. And then you can go into receiving everything without apology. Pleasure can be a power source, and pleasure can be an identity expansion. Okay. Pillar number 2, sexual energy as identity blueprint, your sexualness. So how you run your sexual energy is how you run your identity. Think about that for a moment. Your sexual field, your sexualness, your sex, like male or female, or non-binary or trans, and your self-concept are all braided together. So most people are running one of these templates. A collapsed sexual identity where they're thinking I'm too much, or I'm not enough, or I'm broken, or I'm dirty, or I'm undesirable, or I'm unsafe. Or they're running a performative sexual identity where they're saying, if I give you what you want, I'll be chosen, kept, or loved. Or if you give me what I want, I'll be chosen, kept, or loved. And then there's also disassociated sexual identity, where sex isn't just that important. I'm fine and I'd rather not feel. And again, I'm not talking about copulation or intercourse with someone else. I'm just talking about those sensations and those feelings in your body. So when your sexual energy or sexual identity is distorted, your manifestation identity is distorted. So you don't feel like you're the kind of person who has money or who is able to receive abundance. And you don't feel like the kind of person who is chosen, seen, or supported. And you don't feel like, or you don't believe that you can be both powerful and safe. So your sexual identity is not who you've been in bed or in a sexual intercourse copulation situation. Your sexual identity is who do you allow yourself to be when you feel desire, power, and aliveness in your body. So identity is a frequency you keep choosing, not a fixed story. Sexual identity shows up in how you dress, how you are with your body and in your body, how you walk into a room, how you hold yourself and your posture, how you make money, like creation, how you speak your needs, how you respond to being wanted or seen. When you regulate your sexual identity, you regulate your abundance identity, your creation identity, your relationship identity, and who am I allowed to be in this lifetime? So we're going to do another exercise. So close your eyes and drop into this prompt as I read it. Imagine a version of you whose sexual energy is clean, sovereign, and fully alive. How do you walk? How do you dress? How do you speak? What do you believe about your body and your worth and your creation energy? Good. All right. Pillar number 3, sexual energy and the nervous system. Power, circulation versus collapse. So the core truth, you cannot be sexually alive and chronically braced at the same time. Sexual energy wants movement. Trauma and conditioning create freeze. So this is where you bring in the nervous system plus the quantum generator. If the body is in fight, flight, were you waving, Amanda?
Yeah, can you say that again? You back up a couple of sentences because I really liked that one.
Yep. So
Not be something about braced. You cannot be
boop, boop, boop.
sexually alive and constantly braced or something like that. What was that?
So you cannot be sexually alive and chronically braced at the same time.
Thank you.
Yeah. Like sexual energy wants movement. It's the trauma and the conditioning that create the freeze. It's the things that have been put on us, things that have happened to us. This is where your nervous system and the quantum generator combine. So if the body is in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, sexual energy is either shut down, chaotic, or gets expressed in addictive patterns. If the body is regulated, then the sexual energy recirculates, builds power, stabilizes identity, and amplifies manifestation. Collapsed nervous system sex looks like this. People use sex to soothe anxiety. People use sex to prove worth. People use sex not to be abandoned. And people use sex as a form of control. So as a quantum sex generator, even when you're alone, looks like this. You can use breath and sensation to circulate energy. You can feel desire without panic or shut down. You can let arousal, joy, and creativity move up through the body as fuel. And you can use an erotic current to power prayer, intention, creation, art. So the nervous system is the circuit board. Sexual energy is the electricity. You don't heal by forcing more electricity into a fired or a fried board. You repair the board, then invite more current. Safety first, then power. So we don't have to do this right now, but here's a little mini practice. So ground yourself. And then name 5 things in the room that you're in. And then inhale through the nose and imagine your breath filling the pelvis or the root. And then exhale with sound. And let tiny movements happen in your hips, spine, and shoulders, like somatic movements, energy moving through the body. And then inhale from the root to the heart and exhale from the heart down the front of the body to the pelvis again. So notice at what intensity level your body wants to check out. And that's your current capacity edge. So don't shame it, be aware of it, and then you can build it or heal it. All right, pillar 4, clearing sexual imprints from lovers and old codes. Most people are not living from their sexual field. They're living from a tangled web of past lovers' energies, porn imprints, religious shame, family patterns, cultural scripts, or, I gotta add this one, sexual assault, abuse. So what does this create? This creates confusion in desire. It creates difficulty trusting your own body. It creates guilt around pleasure. And it creates repeating the same relationship, abundance, and power dynamics in new costumes. So here's some language you can use. Your sexual system carries data. Not all of it is yours. Not all of it belongs in your field now in 2025. So we're going to clear that. Okay, so place a hand on your heart and a hand on your lower belly and call to mind any person, story, or pattern you feel tangled with sexually, and repeat this silently or out loud to yourself. I release you from my body and my field. I call my life force back to me, cleansed and recalibrated. I keep the wisdom. I release the distortion. Our contract is now complete. You are free to go. Leave now. Return. So you could journal, what am I no longer available for in my sexual field? What am I no longer available for in my sexual field? And what am I now inviting into my sexual field? So pillar 5 is rebuilding a sovereign sexual field. So once you clear, you can rebuild. If you don't consciously build a new sexual template, your old one will creep in or could creep in. So a sovereign sexual field means your body belongs to you, your desire belongs to you, your pleasure belongs to you, and your power is not up for negotiation. And so from here, creation responds to you differently, people respond to you differently, opportunities, timelines, and miracles track you because your signal is clear. All right. So sovereignty isn't, I don't need anyone anymore. And sovereignty is, I am sourced from within. I choose from fullness, not from deceit. And you can rebuild through micro choices, saying no when your body says no, and being present and aware. And like I said earlier, when your body is aware of a sexual charge or a sexualness with another being, you can always ask it questions. And it doesn't mean that that has to be a choice. It can just mean, oh, I have sexual energy. And then what can you do with that sexual energy? Well, you can pull it up through your own body and resurface it and recycle it and use it for yourself. You don't have to give it away or have an exchange necessarily in copulation with anyone. So sexual sovereignty feeds abundance identity. I'm a match for well-being, being well paid, being held, being seen, being resourced. Sexual sovereignty feeds power identity. I can hold attention, desire, money, and visibility without shrinking. And it feeds the manifestation field. What I ask for, I can actually hold and receive. Okay. Does anyone have any questions? No? Okay. So here's the closing activation. Sex equals generator. Take one slow breath into your belly, into your hips, into the place where your body meets your power. And then feel this as I say it. Sexual energy is life force. Life force is manifestation. It's one river with many names. Sex opens the body. Sex brings awareness into the body. And when your body feels sexual energy, you don't have to act on it. You are not at the mercy of it. You are the conduit. And right now, drop your awareness down into the root and into the womb and into the sacral and into the place inside you that pulses, that hungers, that glows. This is your generator, your abundance engine, your personal creation field. Breathe into it like you're feeding a spark. And then on your next inhale, imagine it warming. Imagine it thickening. Imagine it expanding. Turning from a tiny spark into a steady glowing ember. And on your exhale, feel that ember send a pulse upward through your whole body. And imagine it being a pulse of, I am allowing, I am open, I am capable, and I am worthy. And let your cells hear it. Now, I want you to bring one thing you want to call in into your mind. Not someday, not when you're healed, something that you want now. Maybe it's money, maybe it's an opportunity, maybe it's a relationship, maybe it's a specific life, a feeling, or a freedom. Let one desire crystallize. Hold it at the center of your mind like a lit candle. Now inhale slowly and deep through your hips, through your pelvis, and right into the sensation of that desire. And I want you to feel it as a desire, like a pleasure desire. Let that desire rise up your spine like warm honey, coiling, lifting, intensifying until it reaches your heart. Now your heart holds your desire, not your mind, your heart. On the exhale, I want you to send that desire from your heart into your third eye, the inner screen where your reality is programmed. See it there, clear, solid, undeniable. You've just moved sexual energy, emotional energy, mental energy. This is manifestation in motion. Now we're going to reverse it because what rises must root. So on your next exhale, I want you to imagine the image in your mind melting down into your chest, down through your belly, all the way back into your pelvis. Let it return to the womb of creation. It returns to the engine that makes things real. And feel this truth land. And then I want you to feel that your desire is safe with you. Your pleasure is power. Your body is the altar. And your sexual energy is the generator your future responds to. Abundance does not move toward coldness and fear. Abundance moves towards warmth, desire, and aliveness. So now place a hand on your lower belly. And you can say this out loud or by yourself, into yourself. I allow my sexual energy to fuel my abundance. I allow my pleasure to expand my capacity to receive. I allow my aliveness to magnetize my next level. I allow my body to open doors my mind could never plan. Take a deep breath. Feel the energy in your body. Now I want you to connect that energy from your root to your heart, and from your heart to your vision, and from your vision back to your root. This is your manifestation circuitry. This is your abundance channel. This is your magic. You are the portal. You are the prayer. You are the spell. So carry this frequency out of this room and watch the world rearrange itself around you. And then when you're ready, you can come back to the room. How's everybody doing? Are you good?
I have no words right now.
Okay. Natalie says, great. Natalie, I'm sorry that the sound was off for you tonight, honey.
It's okay. That was very, very powerful.
Yay.
Thank you. I took myself through the whole practice in the mirror as I listened to you in my
Cool.
raw, naked bodysuit and just closed my eyes. And I went in so deep. That was very beautiful.
Very cool.
Thank
I
you.
love that suggestion. Yeah, if I'll send out the recording, and if you're
Yeah.
feeling like it, get naked with yourself and stand in front of a mirror and do it.
It's powerful. We were given this body to be in our body.
We were, and a lot of us don't feel connected to our bodies, or we feel shame having a body, or
Yeah.
we weren't taught that it's okay to feel pleasure in these bodies.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm learning. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right. Anyone else? Does anyone need me to stay after to facilitate them on anything privately? No? Okay. Are we good? It was nice to see all of you. Thank you all for coming tonight. I'll send out the recording to those of you that have chosen that. I love you. I hope everybody has a good night. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye. Thank you, Rebecca.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.